Politics Today, live on Channels Television. I'm Sean Kimale in Abuja. So much for us to digest tonight. So let's stick together and let's get onto these 60 minutes drive. The presidency has revealed that President Bola Tinubu will travel out of the country for the first time since assuming office on the 29th of May this year. The president will participate in the two-day summit in France that will be June 22nd and the 23rd. The trip, according to Mr. Dele Alake in a statement released from the State House, says it's to join. The president will be joining world leaders in Paris and France to review and sign a new global financial pact that places vulnerable countries on priority list for support and investment following devastating impact of climate change, energy crisis, and after effect of the COVID-19 pandemic. The president is due to leave on Thursday, June the 22nd, and expected to be back to the country on Saturday. The event, we understand, is being hosted by President Macron of France, and it is President Tinubu's first official trip abroad. The governor of Plateau State, Governor Caleb Mutfwang, today declared a 24-hour curfew on Mangu local government area of the state following a renewed attack on some communities. In a decision made public by the government today, there will be no vehicular movement of any such during the curfew, and all movement of motorcycles have now been banned until further notice, as only security personnel and workers on essential duties would be allowed to operate within the local government area. In the meantime, Governor Mutfwang has called on citizens to exhibit the spirit of calmness, tolerance, and forgiveness over the recent incidents that led to loss of lives in Mangu LGA. Governor Caleb Mutfwang recently revealed that about 150 people have been killed in Mangu within 3 weeks. Some activities in the presidential villa. Nigerian businessman Aliko Dangote is back to the State House in Abuja, and this time he came with his fellow billionaire and philanthropist and the co-chair of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Mr. Bill Gates. Mr. Gates congratulated President Bola Tinubu on the removal of fuel subsidy and other recent strides achieved by the new administration. The president pledged to prioritize the health and safety of Nigerians, underscoring the health of citizens, particularly the workforce, is critical for any country to develop.
It was a courtesy call. We came in for myself and my friend Bill Gates to congratulate him once more for his successful election into this office, and also to brief him of what Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and Aliko Dangote Foundation we've been doing in Nigeria, and also committing to do more and to help Nigeria so that our health sector will keep improving, which will turn out to be better for the whole citizens of the country. All is great. Things are, going well. We even congratulated him on the removal of subsidy, and I think he's doing a great job. Well, I expect that it's going to be better for everybody. There will be more money now to put into education, into health, infrastructure, and other areas. And our own side is to help support him to make sure that he achieves his own vision and his goals.
And still on the subsidy matter, we keep our eyes on the meeting which has ended at the presidential villa on the negotiation over the aftermath of the removal of fuel subsidy. The negotiation resumed between the federal government and the organized labor on their recently implemented removal of petroleum subsidy. Both parties in the negotiation reconvened today at the conference room of the Chief of Staff for a follow-up on the last session held on the 5th of June, where some agreements were reached, subsequently causing Labour to suspend its planned strike until further talks scheduled for today, the 19th of June. And we understand that an 8-week deadline has been, window has been given for the implementation of these. The federal government, the TUC and the NLC were also reviewing the World Bank Finance Cash Transfer Scheme and proposed inclusion of low-income earners in the program, as well as a revival of the CNG conversion program. Labour centers these on their demands and the negotiation on how the federal government should handle the aftershocks of the removal. Tonight, our major conversation will be on Kano State. There's been some tension in one of Nigeria's most populous states over the recent activities of the state government. There's been quite a few demolitions there, and it's caused some tension there, politically speaking, and there's been some reactions and counter-reactions from government. Tonight, we'll be getting perspectives on this one. So stick around with me, everyone, because first, let's check out your political roundup stories.
In a bid to further strengthen the nation's judiciary, the Chief Justice of Nigeria, CJN, Justice Olukayode Ariola, has sworn in 6 newly appointed judges of the National Industrial Court. The event happened today at the Supreme Court in Abuja. Justice Ariola charges the judges to discharge their duties with utmost honor and integrity of their calling by shunning all forms of corruption.
Many high-profile cases will definitely come to you, and they may likely come in company of some juicy, irresistible temptations, especially when they involve mouth-watering financial and business transactions. I'm making it clear to you now that you must flee.
The Presidential Election Petition Court has again adjourned the petition filed by the Allied People's Movement, APM, challenging the February 25th election victory of President Bola Tinubu and Vice President Kashim Shettima of the All Progressives Congress, APC, to the 21st of June for hearing. The Presidential Election Petition Tribunal had fixed June 19 to commence hearing of the petition filed by the Allied People's Movement, APM. At the resumed hearing, the party asked for 1-week adjournment, which was turned down by the court. The 3-man Ogun State Election Petition Tribunal, sitting in Abeokuta, the state capital, has dismissed an attempt by the People's Democratic Party and its candidate in the March 18th governorship election, Ladi Adebutu, to introduce new facts to reply by the second respondent, Dapo Abiodun, to the PDP petition. In a unanimous ruling by the 3-man tribunal headed by Justice Hamidu Kunaza, the tribunal was of the opinion that the petitioner failed to utilize the 21-day window of opportunity to bring new facts onto the petition. According to the tribunal, the PDP had attempted to introduce new facts which border on vote buying in its reply to respond to Dapo Abiodun on the petition before the tribunal. The tribunal has, however, adjourned till the 22nd of this month for commencement of pre-hearing of the petition. 7 former members of the State Working Committee of the People's Democratic Party in Imo State, who dumped the party, have now moved to the All Progressives Congress barely 24 hours after resigning from the party. The former members of the opposition party, headed by the state deputy chairman, Mr. Martin Ejiogo, made the announcement while paying a courtesy visit to Governor Hope Uzodinma in Owerri, the state capital, where they pledged their support to the administration's leadership and promised to also support his re-election bid ahead of November 11 governorship election.
Let us come together and work together for the interest of our people. And I can assure you, nothing will discriminate against this decision.
Thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us. So let's begin. Tonight, we bring you the latest updates on the political tension gripping Kano State following a series of demolitions and the swift actions of the new government of Governor Abba Yusuf. Over the past few weeks, Kano State has become a hotbed of controversies and division as the new government's ambitious agenda unfolds. Several permanent structures, including markets, buildings, and even historical landmarks have now been demolished, sparking outrage and unrest among the people. The demolitions carried out in the name of urban renewal and infrastructural development have been met with mixed reactions, while some citizens applaud the government's efforts to modernize the state and enhance its economic prospects. Others view these actions as a severe violation of property rights and cultural heritage. Of course, I mean, there are a lot of people who will say there are a lot of political undertones to the decisions of the present government, and it didn't take the government of Abba Yusuf of the NNPP when it took power to start to begin with these demolitions. What are the reasons behind the demolitions? Opposition parties are already speaking up about this. Citizens in the state are reacting either good or bad about the decision of the government, and there are those who are already asking critical questions as to what this means for the lives and livelihoods of the people of Kano State. And we shall be getting some reactions on this tonight on the program. You remember that Governor Abdullah Ganduje, either by accident or coincidence or whatever, was at the State House in Abuja to see President Tinubu. And the same day, Senator Rabi Kwankwaso was also in the villa. And you remember that popular statement that he says maybe if he saw him, he may have slapped Senator Kwankwaso. Well, that also generated a lot of controversy. Don't forget, Governor Abdullah Ganduje was the one who just left office, and his party was defeated by the NNPP, the party in power. Let me remind you of the reaction of Governor Ganduje at the villa on some of the activities of the present government.
If we cannot respect what a previous government has done, to consider it illegal without going through due process, how can we administer public like that? So these are the issues with the cliff. It's not a hearsay. We have the thing going on. People are abusing the government now. Those who can speak Hausa, we can put the clip for you to hear what they are saying. And unfortunately, some of their members have even...
All right, then, that was Governor Abdullah Ganduje, the governor of, the former governor of Kano State and the presidential candidate of NNPP in the 2023 presidential election, who met with President Tinubu. It was around the same time. I'd like you to listen to his own response.
Are you not shocked? President was shocked. He didn't know. He even mentioned that he talked to somebody to go and find out for him. For those of you who are in Kano, you know, Medway Daula, demolished to zero. And that's a faculty under Kano University of Science and Technology. He demolished that one. The entire structures was billions of naira, and sacked all the students and sacked all the lecturers. Demolished, and he was building, or they were in the process of building a mall where to buy and sell. And who owned that mall is him and his children.
All right, let's get some perspective on this conversation. I'm being joined by a former governorship aspirant in the PDP, Mr. Jafar Bello. He joins us live here in our Abuja studio. Thank you so much indeed, Mr. Bello, for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
What is going on in Kano?
Well, actually, there is a host of things that are going on in Kano, and I believe governance should be about the rule of law, first of all, start with. And it seems like the government that has been put in place of the anointed candidate or the chosen successor of Engineer Rabiu Musa Kwankwaso in the person of Abba Yusuf have not learned lessons of the previous administration when they carried out exercises of demolition, whereby some people have been to court and the state government had to dole out the sum of about 500 million naira to just one individual in the farm center area. I believe if you are going to take an exercise of this magnitude, imagine 126 billion, according to the nation's report of yesterday, has been demolished. And this thing has
How many structures now have been demolished so far? Well, we know about what's it called now? The monument, that one has been demolished.
That issue of the monument.
There is a hotel around the praying ground.
That issue of the monument is the one that breaks the camel's back. It is the one that also brings to light that the exercise is carried out of vengeance and anger. There are three factors that these people have stated were being behind the reason why they demolished the monumental structure, which was put in place to commemorate the 50th anniversary of Kano State. They said it's blocking traffic. You are quite conversant with the traffic in Abuja, the roundabout around Baga Junction. How can an upcoming traffic or motor see the other one that is from the adjacent angle? It's so big like that, then that shouldn't be a reason. And people have lived with this thing for about 6-7 years. And then the second reason they brought about is that they said that the structure was faulty and it is going to collapse maybe by next year. Who are the engineers that carried out the study? Who are the engineers that did this fact-finding? I think this is a challenge on the Nigerian Society of Engineers and the Council for the Regulation of Engineers to do a fact check, because these engineers that certify that this monument is going to collapse should be able to append their names and signatures on that report, and people should be able to know them and hold them to account.
What about the claim that
it carries a cross? They said if you take an aerial view of the monument, it has a cross. For goodness sake, what has an aerial view of a monument got to do with the monument being in place? It is quite egregious.
For people of Kano State, does a cross, I mean, we know there is an operation of Sharia law in Kano State in part, but there is also the secularity practice in Kano State. We know that predominantly Islam is a major religious practice in Kano State. But does any kind of other religious sentiment, does it offend the Muslims in Kano State?
Mr. Shewun, they are just trying to cover off tracks, and they slipped. Because now they are trying to see how to eradicate those words that they have uttered from their own mouths. This monument was built out of a selected submission of about 10 different monuments. A committee was set up by the state government at that time, which was chaired by the then Deputy Governor of Kano State, Professor Hafizu, who is also learned and vast in the Islamic religion. And the person that won the design of the monument, Hajia Kaltimagana, is also a Muslim. And there are so many Muslims of renowned personalities that are known in Kano that were members of that committee that went through the selection process of submissions that were made for a monument to be brought about in that area. And now Kano has lost forever the opportunity to have a monument that will commemorate its 50th anniversary, because you can't just build anything there again and say it's a monument because our 50th anniversary is long gone. You are just going to build something there and it's going to stand and
so let's take these issues one after the other. The hotel, very close to the praying ground, perhaps the structure that we are saying, there was an incident with the scavengers, which, I mean, there was an incident where the state government was reacting to. There are questions that the government has raised over the propriety of this facility. Does that come to mind when you judge the action of this government? You see,
totally these things are uncalled for. If you say these structures are constructed illegally, you need time to ascertain the veracity of these structures being constructed illegally. But the question, the fundamental question to be asked here is there any site in Kano? I challenge anybody to produce a single site in Kano which the previous administration has carved out a plot, which the administration of Engineer Rabiu Musa Konkoso from 2011 to 2015 had not done similar thing. The same Daula Hotel that I saw him speaking about, he was the one that divided into an allocated plot of lands. He owns a house there. So many prominent Nigerians own properties there. The same university that he's talking about, he had to have a case with Bayero University, which is a federal institution, because he carved out layouts adjacent to the building of the Bayero University.
But based on what Senator Kunkonso said, is it right to also use a facility or a property that is meant for educational purposes and be converted to something else? Is it right?
He has done similarly.
But does it make it right?
Even if it doesn't make it right, it sounds egregious for somebody that has committed the same atrocities now to be pointing fingers at somebody else. And there should have been a timeline. These things, if they are going to be done, they should be corrected in totality without fear or favor. When you talk about cronyism, when you talk about people trying to favor their family members, haven't he done similar things? There are so many. And in fact, what they talked about when they said that the structure is going to collapse in the next 1 year or two. The only time in the history of Kano we had an administration which has contracted a project, a structural project in Kano which has collapsed was during his reign between 2011 to 2015, where he contracted out a pedestrian bridge at Urei and various other sections in Kano State, and it collapsed, killing 7 people. Check the Premium Times of April 26, 2014. That was the only time we had an incident in Kano where an administration in Kano gave out a contract, and the contract consisting of the development or building of a structure which has collapsed and has caused casualties. So the whole issue is there should be parameters that would be set to ascertain the structures that have deviated the master plan of the state or that were built illegally. But these people that own these properties are also citizens of this country, and they have a right. Their rights should be respected. The best thing was for the state government to have set up a committee to verify all these insinuations that are being linked to these plots that have been allocated or these structures that were designated to be demolished. Then it can approach the court.
Just a moment, please.
Yes.
We've got some breaking news for you right this hour, right here on Channels Television. Some statement coming from the federal government indicates that President Bola Tinubu has now retired all service chiefs, advisors, Comptroller General of Customs, and the president has made appointment of new ones. Let me just give you an idea of some of the new appointments. The president has substantively appointed Mr. Nuhu Rabadu as the National Security Advisor, and he's also confirmed the appointment of Major General C.G. Musa as the Chief of Defense Staff, Major General T. Elagwaja, Chief of Army Staff, Rear Admiral E.A. Ogala, Chief of Naval Staff, Evers Marshal H.B. Abubakar, Chief of Air Staff, and DIG Kano Demolition as the Acting Inspector General of Police, and Major General E.P.A. Udianye as the Chief of Defense Intelligence. There are other appointments that have been made across board. We do know that other appointments include Ms. Adiza Bala Usman, who has now been appointed as a Special Advisor on Policy Coordination. Stick around with us right here on Channels Television. We'll bring you more on the new updates coming from the presidential villa. Breaking news right here. There has been dissolution in some offices across the nation by President Bola Tinubu, who had confirmed Malam Nuhu Rabadu as a substantive National Security Advisor. DIG Kaode Egbetokun is the Acting Inspector General of Police, and some other appointments that have been made, especially with reference to service chiefs. We'll be bringing you much more details of that. Let's continue our conversation now. And let me quickly ask you before I bring some other perspective. You said vengeance. What makes you think there is any kind of vengeance from
the body language of His Excellency Dr. Rabiu Musa Kwankwaso, with all due respect, signals that? Because when you hurry, when you rush into taking some certain decisions that it's going to affect some certain citizens of the states, there has to be some certain level of rationality in discharging or implementing those decisions that have been taken. This rush, especially with the issue of the demolition of the roundabout, the monument of Kano State, which was constructed to mark the 50th anniversary of Kano State, clearly shows that there is anger and there is a haste in carrying out these exercises just to ensure that the previous administration legacies or what have you have been completely wiped out of the landmark of the state. And these things are totally uncalled for. What we need is a system whereby investors will be encouraged to come into the state. Citizens of the state would be encouraged to own properties and to invest in businesses on the properties they have procured. But now what we have a system whereby the state has been downgraded in its financial ratings, especially when it comes to issues of credit. Most of the banks in Nigeria now have downgraded certificates of occupancies that originate from Kano, all because of this action of the government of Kano State presently. There are so many things that could be inimical to development or to the development of the state, and I believe that government should be an issue of continuity. You look at what your predecessors have done, where they have erred, you sit down in a surgical manner and address the mistakes that they have made in a way that it will not affect the economic and prosperity of the state that you are about to govern, making things easier for the citizenry of the state and making things easier for your own government to achieve its end. At the end of the day, there are going to just be a lot of legal issues here and there. The government will be battling with development issues and the government will be battling with legal issues in the courts of law, because these people are not just going to fold their arms. They are going to go to court and seek legal redress. And I believe, as far as I'm concerned, the executive governor of Kano State presently, who happens to be saddled with the constitutional responsibility of governing the state, should be allowed to do his job. Even the issue of Engineer Rabiu Musa Kwankwaso going to see the president and address him on the issues of Kano is in violation of the provisions of the Constitution. The Constitution in Part 2, Section 176 and 179 clearly spelled out that every state of the federation shall have a state governor, and the state governor should be the chief executive officer of the state.
Let's pause for a moment. Let me get the government side of the explanation to some of this decision. We have the Secretary to the Government of Kano State, Mr. Bafa Bichi, who is live for us in our Kano studio. Thank you so much, Mr. Bichi, for joining us. What a period and a moment in Kano State, and a lot of reactions have trade the decision of the government. Give us an understanding. This looks like the very first activities of the Abba Yusuf government in Kano State. Why?
Thank you very much, Sharon, for having me. It amazes me when I see people struggling tooth and nail, trying to justify the unjustifiable, trying to defend the indefensible. Now, what we are trying to do is, we have promised during our campaign, His Excellency Engineer Abba Yusuf, the Executive Governor of Kano State, has made promises during the campaign exercises that all the illegalities committed, especially the land grabbing in schools, in colleges, in hospitals, in markets, in places of worship, along the historical city wall, all this, even in graveyards, he promised that he is going to revoke such allocation and reclaim such properties and such land for the use of Kano State. Public good is the driving factor that is driving this policy of reclamation and revocation of illegally acquired property. It doesn't happen anywhere in the world where a school, primary school, for our children will be butchered and land will be given inside the school. In many places, classroom demolished, toilets for our children demolished to give way for shops to be built. In many secondary schools, classrooms, laboratories, science laboratories will be demolished. The wall of the school will be, an entire staff quarters will be sold and demolished to give way to build shops. In many places, hospitals, Staff quarters for medical doctors, doctors' quarters they call them usually, will be sold, demolished to give way to build event center to be conducting wedding ceremonies. These are unacceptable. These are technically inhumane. In many places, masjid, places of worship, mosques will be butchered, and land will be allocated for people to build shops. Nowhere in the world where you will turn place of worship into a full-blown market. The 8-ground market, the 8-ground masjid in Kano is the biggest mosque in Kano State. It's the most historic. It's as old as Islam in Kano. Every emir of Kano, every governor of Kano, every senior citizen in Kano prays in that Eid mosque. But that Eid mosque was completely butchered. Land grabbers grabbed land and erected structures all over. And these are the things that we thought it is unacceptable. Kano people believe that what we are doing is correct, what we are doing is right, trying to paint a picture from outside Kano, running to Abuja and start creating stories, trying to change the narrative, will not help you, will not help the opposition party, and will not help anybody. Kano people are celebrating this exercise. Kano people are happy with what Governor Abba Yusuf is doing. We believe that we cannot allow any government.
All right. So, Mr. Bichi, let's take this issue one after the other. All right. So we can make sense of it. This appears to be the very first activities, and some have criticized that. Did the government actually sit down and plan this demolition, or it just came as a form of vengeance, like your friend here has alluded, that this is just pure vengeance? Because when we wonder why demolition would be the very first activities of a new government in power.
One, let me say that vengeance is completely alien in our group, in our Konkosia movement, in our political party, the NNPP, and certainly in the mind of our governor, Engineer Abba Yusuf. There's nothing like vengeance. But this is well planned, even when we started our campaign for 2023 general election. When we were doing the transition committee exercise, it was being planned. So it's not the first exercise. Immediately, Engineer Abba Yusuf was sworn in. The very day, that very hour, he rushed to visit all abandoned projects in many local governments, in many sites, and made policy statement about continuing with those abandoned projects, ensuring their completion. He visited secondary school, boarding secondary schools. He visited cemeteries, graveyards. He visited quite a number of places.
Mr. Bichi, let me jump in quickly. Yes. Let me jump. Before you, there was some position that government has made in Kano State about some of these structures. Yeah. Was there any committee set up to identify the propriety, the effectiveness, and the history of some of these structures? And there were reports before the government came about with this demolition. Were there any kind of report or a planned assessment of these structures before the government came about the demolitions?
Besides being the chairman of the transition committee, you sincerely was the chairman of the committee for revocation and reclamation of properties belonging to government that were illegally acquired. So I chaired the committee, and from that committee, we did a number of technical committees with experts. We gave lawyers, we gave engineers, structural engineers, architects, we gave financial experts. There was a committee, I chaired the committee, and that committee came up with a comprehensive report, identified this project, even did an analysis on their ownership. We know the owners, and that is why we categorize any structure built in schools, whether primary, secondary, tertiary, universities, any structure built in hospitals, all structures built in places of worship, all structures built in cemeteries, graveyards, all structures built along the walls, the famous city wall. These are the 5 areas and the structures that are posing security threats. These are the structures that we identified. They were illegally, the land was illegally acquired, and they were illegally built, and most of them, fundamentally, the major ones, were owned by Ganduje and his family and his close associates. How can you be entrusted with governance of a state and you end up taking ownership of the property that is meant for public good, property that is meant for collective ownership of the entire people of the state. These are the things that we are talking about. And that is why we said we want to create an environment where being a political leader, being elected as a governor, will not give you the license to transfer ownership of publicly owned properties to yourself, to your family, or to your chosen one. The reverse ought to have been the case. People transfer ownership of their personal properties for public use, rather than converting properties meant for public use to personal use. And this is exactly the crux of the policy of revoking this allocation and reclaiming this land for original intention and to be used as in the overriding public good.
Mr. Bichi, we are due for a break. We'll take a breather. But when we come back, everyone, we'll be asking the question, what are the plans for any kind of compensation? Some of these activities done legally in Kano State. Is the government of the day aware of some of the civil litigation backlash that these might generate in the state and the political tension that this has created in the state? We'll be getting some of these reactions when we come back from the break. Don't forget, the breaking news right here on China's television. President Bola Tinubu today has dissolved and retired some of the service chiefs and reappointed to some other personnel to replace them. Mr. Nuhu Ribadu is going to be the NSA. He is the NSA, the National Security Advisor. DIG Kano Demolition is the Acting Inspector General of Police. The Controller of Customs has also been replaced, plus some other appointments that have been made. We'll give you details when we return from this break, everyone. Join us again. Thank you so much, everyone. The breaking news that we're following for you, coming from the federal government and released from the office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, signed by the Director of Information, Willie Bassi. We now can confirm to you, Malam Nuhu Ribadu is being confirmed as a National Security Advisor, and President Bola Tinubu has dissolved the service chiefs and reappointed others for that position. Also, the president has approved some appointments for some of the major military formations around the presidency, and of course made some major decision around the defense and service chiefs. Major General C.G. Musa, Chief of Defense Staff; Major T.A. Lagwaja, Chief of Army Staff; Rear Admiral E.A. Ogala, Chief of Naval Staff; Air Vice Marshal H.B. Abubakar, Chief of Air Staff; DIG Kano Demolition is the Acting Inspector General of Police; Major General E.P.A. Ondiandeye is the Chief of Defense Intelligence. Some of these appointments, we understand, will take immediate effect and to replace those who are being in that office. Some of the other notable names that are being appointed are some of the politicians that we know. Adiza Bala Usman, who played a major role in the campaign, is going to be advising the president on policy coordination and one of the spokespersons of the campaign. Hanatu Musawa, special advisor in culture and entertainment. And of course, a major one that everyone will may be talking about is the NSA and the Acting Inspector General of Police, Kano Demolition, Nuhu Ribadu, as the NSA. Let's get back to our conversation and this SSG in Kano State. Mr. Bafa Bichi has been speaking with us on some of the demolitions and activities of the Abba Yusuf administration in Kano State as well. We have Mr. Yusuf, who has also been speaking, who is Jaffa Yusuf Bello. Sarah Bonnie's apologies. Jaffa Sani Bello, yes, who is a governorship aspirant of the PDP in Kano State. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for speaking with us tonight. Just to spend like 2 minutes on some of these appointments that the breaking news that we are following. Mr. Bichi, let me take you quickly away from Kano politics, and let me get your reaction. What do you make of some of these appointments that have been made? This is going to the 4th week of President Bola Tinubu. He has now removed all service chiefs, made new appointments, and confirmed the NSA, confirmed an acting Inspector General of Police. What do you make of that?
I think it's very much expected. And from the announcement, I don't know them. I know Nuhu Ribadu very well. But the rest, looking at the appointment, is properly balanced. And looking at the first steps of His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, you will say that he knows his onions. He will select the correct and the right caliber of people. And by and large, we believe that these choices are also in line with his previous choices, correct and good for the country. So we congratulate them and we wish them all the best. And I believe that he has done all the due diligence and he has tried to balance the appointment in the overall interest of the country. So congratulations, and we thank President for taking such a quick decision and making these appointments as early as now.
Let me ask you, Mr. Sonny Bello, your reaction to these appointments and the timing of some of these appointments too.
Yes, especially with regards to the appointment of the National Security Advisor, where there have been so much issues. Furore and hula balu flitting from the military officers and chiefs saying that he's too junior to be for them to be reporting to him. I don't know where that mentality, psychopathic mindset sets into them. Condoleezza Rice was just a professor, and she was a National Security Advisor of the United States of America. Take a cue also, Professor Galadanchi was a National Security Advisor to Alhaji Shehu Shagari. It is the issue of competence, capacity, and capability. And I think Mr. President, His Excellency Bola Ahmed Tinubu, is sticking his guns and standing his grounds that Nuhu Ribadu is his choice for National Security Advisor. Is a welcome development for our nation, so that we will move forward. He has to put every square peg in a square hole and round pegs in round holes.
But if you look at the timing also, what do you make of it?
I make it as a very
especially in terms of security, because most of the appointments announced today are security related. One
of the issues that you would take into consideration is the fact that the president has the security of the nation at the bottom of his heart. And it is now taking the top echelon of his decisions. For him to have concentrated in ensuring and trying to sanitize the military architecture and the security architecture of this nation by making these new appointments of people that he believes that can deliver on his promises and his desire on securing the nation, I think it's a welcome development, and there could be no better time than now. Now that it is done, there couldn't have been any better time than now.
I mean, there's been, Mr. Bichi, let me get this from you. There's been a lot of agitation in the past. President Buhari has been heavily criticized about ethnic and tribal distribution, balance of powers based on federal character, especially in the security. But if you look at the names, I mean, one will make critical analysis of some of these positions and how much of the spread we have experienced in Bola Tinubu's appointment. But from the face value of it, of this appointment, do you think that there's been some substantial recognition of the need for a federal character in the spread?
Well, substantial departure, I will say. There is a substantial departure from the past. That's why I said that the appointment appeared to be very balanced, and it is balanced. And the choice of the people across the country and the timing of the appointment at the critical time when our country is facing so many security challenges is very much appropriate. And I believe that the timing, as well as the choice and the distribution and the balance, are appropriate. And President Bola Ahmed Tinubu clearly is determined to put security as a priority in the governance of Nigeria. And this is really commendable. This is really welcome. And we believe that we are going to see some rapid changes, some very positive changes in the manner the security of our country is being handled, is being managed. And we are soon going to see the end of banditry, kidnapping, cattle rustling, and violent extremism. We are going to see an end to all these in due course.
Quick one. So let's get back to the Kano matter now.
Good.
How do you defend what we are hearing coming from the government quarters? That one of the reasons for the demolition of the monument in front of the government house is because of the cross sign that is perceived to be on that monument. Is that right?
I think that is a red herring that is being propagandized by vested interests and elements that are fighting this restoration exercise of the places that they have grabbed illegally. That monument was removed because it is posing a security threat to the government house. It is causing traffic jam at the doorstep of government house. It is obstructing the views of road users and motorists that are flying the road in front of the government house. These are the reasons, and it is wrongly
Mr. Bichi, for those who believe that, just for a moment, if I jump in quickly, for those who think that these monuments and some of these structures were put up using the taxes and the money of the Kano State people, I mean, how would you then just wake up one morning, and these are what your critics are saying about this new administration, and pulling them down? Is that morally justified?
Sure. We recovered, somebody was claiming that 120-something billion worth of structures were demolished. We recovered trillions of naira worth of properties belonging to Kano that the previous administration have misappropriated for themselves and their family. Trillions. The Eid ground at all, only the Eid ground is worth trillions of naira. It is priceless. And we have recovered it for the good people of Kano. If you are going to lose a penny to gain a pound, I think it is worth investing or losing a penny to gain a pound. And that is exactly what we are doing. So the demolition of a structure on a roundabout that is even the committee that was set up to put that monument in place recommended an appropriate place. A Golden Jubilee Park, they call it a Golden Jubilee Park, and the location is there. But single-handedly, one person decided that to inflate the cost from 160 million to 450 million and downgrade the size and put it to obstruct government house.
Mr. Bichi, just a moment before I get your final thought, just in a few seconds. Let me allow you within some very few seconds to react. You heard, he heard you. You have heard him now.
It's very funny, and I think it's laughable that Bichi is trying to call what he has stated on BBC Hausa with his own voice. That is just a red line, and that it's been peddled by opponents and opponents of these actions of the government. And a statement that he made that I'm running to Abuja to make comments. These statements that I'm making here in Abuja, a couple of days back, I made them in Kano over 5 radio stations. If he doesn't know me that much, he can ask his boss or his boss's bosses. They will tell him that I don't shy away from airing my opinion, no matter who's ours are God. And for him to simply now come on national TV after making a statement that could inflate the emotional psyche of the massive people of Kano in a dialect they understand. But for him to come on national TV to chide away from that is quite unfortunate, and I can't believe it.
Let me give you 30 seconds, Mr. Bichi, to respond and your final thought. Just 30 seconds.
Sure. I didn't call it a red lining. I call it a red herring. And it is a red herring. We're talking about a government that has land grab properties belonging to schools, belonging to hospitals, belonging to mosques, belonging to graveyard, and they have...
Did you say that there was a sign of a cross on that? Did you say it or not?
To say that I said this on BBC, I think I can't believe this. I can't. First, I'm a Muslim. I know that about it, and that nobody can take that away from me. I am a Muslim. But to say that I was on BBC calling a cross sign, I have seen some of my friends calling me to verify, to say this. First, My reaction would have been heard about whether I said that or not, rather than passing judgment of me. And that's why I call it a red herring. You are leaving the actual issue and trying to take a non-issue.
All right, gentlemen, we are totally out of time. Thank you so much, Mr. Bafa Bichi, the Secretary to the Government of Kano State. Thank you indeed for shedding light on some of the activities of your government in this respect. And of course, Mr. Sunny Bello, thank you so much.
Thank you very much,
former
Mr.
PDP governorship aspirant in Kano State. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, sir.
Don't forget, at the top of the hour, I'll bring you details of the breaking news that we're following for you. The new appointment made by President Bola Tinubu. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. I'll see you tomorrow at 7 p.m. Bye-bye, everyone.